What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode. Man, I'm out here. It is Thursday. And I felt like I wanted to get on and talk about magic. I want to talk about magic. And before I talk about magic, I want to talk a little bit about my concerns about talking about magic. I think we try so hard to be seen as a serious person, a reputable person with, observations, political observations, and someone who can come for a steady set of logic. My first job was out of college, was on Capitol Hill. And I moved through this whole arena of Washington, D.C. stuff. And I got into more creative space. And I'm grateful to be in a more creative space. But even as a creative, but certainly as someone in the political space and as a journalist, the incentives are to be logical. The incentive, all that means is to adhere to a certain script, a certain vernacular, a certain sense of what the world is. One that's been prescribed for us. One that many people seem to have co-signed. One that is... You want to use words that are easily recognized by other people and that can be validated by other people. I just want to point how limiting that is. If every word you say, every perspective you take, every sentence you make, not just the sentences you make, but the way you view the world is through a lens that has been validated, is through language, labels, assumptions that have been accepted societally. Like, look around and notice how backwards so much of our society is. Look at how absurd things are and how far people have pulled away from reality, And yet that's the conversation we have. And that's why you see on the news and shit, there's always this conversation. Like, they know it's safe, it's expected to talk about the political class, to talk about Capitol Hill. They have a person who's committed, who, all the news stations have a person who every day he goes to Capitol Hill and they engage with the politicians. That's how we talk about reality. That's reality. That's news. That's journalism. And so there's a logic behind that, and everyone kind of performs that without thinking about it, without questioning deeper, without asking for deeper truths, without wondering it. And we all assume this. And I think it's a big problem. And I think it sets us up to not be able to see and appreciate the magic that is all around us. The magic. Magic defined here as merely phenomena that escapes our understanding. When, a lot of things that we used to call magic, we now understand. We now, or whether it's magic or some sort of other realm, otherworldly things, we have an understanding for them. We have an understanding about what earthquakes are. We have an understanding about what volcanic eruptions are. We don't do what so many of our ancestors likely did, which was to attribute them to a deity, or God is angry. We know why famines happen and droughts. We understand cycles of nature. We understand the seasons and how they change. And we have an understanding. Most of us have a general understanding of these things. And so they're no longer in the realm of magic. They're no longer in the realm of something esoteric. We can start to apply language to these phenomena and explore them more deeply. Earthquakes, before it was just like, oh my shit, what the fuck? The ground is shaking underneath us. Now we understand we have a tectonic theory about plates and all of this. And so magic, we take shit for granted. There's magic all around, all the time. The funny thing is, it's these realms, the sciences, they don't necessarily engage. They wouldn't necessarily talk in the realm of magic and some of these things, but they when you look at the complexity of what they're pointing to, they still don't have a full picture. You still arrive at this unknown element. the massive amount of improbable things that had to come together to make your life possible, your life possible. This knife's edge of ecological overlapping realities of complexity and collaboration and competition and the life cycle, this complex thing, the distance that we are from the sun and from other planets, the orbiting, the oxygen that helps us breathe, and that interrelated relationship with the plants and carbon dioxide, and the birds and the hummingbirds and the, say the insects. Our need for water. That's externally. I can keep going. I mean, I'm just pointing to a couple of things, man. We take it for granted. It is not a given that these things would be. Consciousness is not a given. This is a completely, absurdly precise arrangement that we are existing in right now, this moment. It's entirely magical. But if you're not paying attention, if you're not giving that story, if you're not inquisitive, if you don't have the time, to sit and look and appreciate and consider, you'll miss all of that majesty. You'll miss all of that magic. Like I said, I gave you a quick, short summary of something about the magic of the cosmos, the magic of our ecological condition on this planet. But further internally, man, you woke up this morning. You're looking at this screen right now. You were looking at things throughout the day. You're not necessarily doing all that. When I say looking, what looking is happening, what people always understand with science, we understand what the eyes are actually doing, what the cones and the rods and the eyes are doing, what the lights and the shadows, and how it's, reverse engineering it back for your eyes and these synapses and make the brain so that you can understand spatial reality. That's all happening. And you're not doing it intentionally. Your breathing, for the most part, is not happening intentionally. The work that your liver is doing, your large and small intestine, your heart, they pump without your intention. It just does so. Wow. How grateful can we be to notice that and to appreciate that? Imagine if it were not that way. Imagine if you had to consciously, actively breathe. Every couple of seconds you had to do something in order to keep living. No, somehow we have the ability to experience and to see and to taste and to touch and have this consciousness, and much of it happens entirely without effort. The external conditions that allow your body to be what it is happen largely without effort. And the way we talk about our bodies, we think about our bodies as though they end at where the skin is. But when you understand the physics of the pressure that's being applied on our body from the outside, we don't feel it. We don't talk about it enough. But the pressure, there's a counterbalancing happening inside and outside, and that is what allows things to take the shape that they do. We talk about gravity, but that's a summarized story. Even our notions, some of our best accepted scientific notions are kind of a shorthand, an incomplete story for what's happening. It's magical. And in the same way where we take for granted, I play this game Overwatch, and I love Overwatch. I love Overwatch 2. It's a real fun game. It's one of the best video games I've ever played, if you ask me. It gets updated every few weeks. They add new characters and new maps and new things. They change the abilities of the heroes and such. And it's so beautifully modeled. The characters, the maps, they have like these futuristic versions of real life cities. And it looks so dope. And I remember back in the day as a kid play like Super Nintendo, and the difference between what was capable then to now, or even Super Nintendo, that trajectory is insane. The the graphics, the pixel quality, the immersion of these games now. The fact that like 12 people can be playing this thing at the same time. I'm not playing against some predetermined figures that are moving in a specific way that have been coded. Like, I actually have to deal with another human with their reactions and all that stuff. It's brilliant. And notice that like a kid born today won't appreciate that difference. You know, it's like, it's magical. The amount of complexity that we take for granted. The Wi-Fi that even lets that happen. I don't know the details on how that works. I know it has something to do with, I think, satellites. I don't know. It just works. And yet, we're just not given the space. We don't, you know, you really do have to actively give yourself the time to appreciate that magic, to look at it and see it as such, to not be caught up in a news cycle that tells you that everything is about some guy at Washington, D.C. and these men and these power games that they're playing and these projections and these lies from the FBI. And, you know, yes, there's a roving, monstrous, like global, there's a genocide happening in Gaza, part of an expansive war over there. There's stuff in Sudan. There's every few weeks another shooting happening either at a school or with some of these figures out here, and it all feels horrible. And yet all of that exists in a context of something that really we have no choice but to call magical, or perhaps spiritual. Spiritual does seem to point to something more specific than magical. But the words overlap to me, if you ask me. A lot of what I'm saying when I say spiritual, I'm engaging with something that is simply not, it can't be articulated. But it is. And, you know, I think it's interesting. Attempts to understand it are cool, but you also have to, it seems, at some point, when we're talking about something about like our reality, our consciousness, at some point you have to let go of trying to understand it, of trying to give language and a logic to it, trying to find a coherent language. It seems to escape even that. So I just want to encourage everybody, this is going to be a short one. I want to encourage everybody to take the time, pull away, unplug, touch grass, go somewhere where nature is, go somewhere away from the buildings and all these man-made creations. Man-made creations, these boxes that we make for efficiency, that we could live and work in and things like this. Go to someplace that we call nature, where trees and grass grows and water, streams, and notice how things aren't boxy. Things are wiggly and wavy and always moving and always evolving, and there's always an interplay, and it's life, and it's precious, and it's magical. And tell yourself a bigger story. Be prepared to accept a bigger story than the typical story about politics, about life. Again, the story we are told, the story that we enact every day on ourselves, the story that we wake up and remind ourselves about bills, or about the news cycle, about politics in the next election, the story about, you know, the right-wing people are selling a story about a civil war and about impending doom and racial, you know, incompatibility between the races and all kinds of the left and the right. All of these stories, they inundate us with these stories. That's the kind of the social story that we often have to deal with. Individually, we have our stories with our families. We have our stories with our careers and you know, the, you know, how we want to be presented in the world. Our tax ID, our credit scores, these things that are frequently giving us a sense of ourselves, giving us a sense of the value of ourselves. It can sometimes give us meaning. It can give us meaning. You know, our careers give us meaning. Our relationships give us meaning. And so that's a good thing. But that, and you know, and they also give us a logical, they also give us, when I say give us a sense, I mean the logic. It gives us a logical sense to wake up and to know things, to feel that we know things. But man, do we not know anything? Man, is everything part of a broader thing that is absolutely unknowable? Notice that the stories we tell ourselves govern us. Human behavior can vary widely based on the story that each of us is holding. And I think that's why so many people are driven by some of the faith traditions and religious stories, because they actually hold space for the beautiful, magical part of this reality. They hold space for it. I don't necessarily think that most of the religions we know, most of them, I don't know if they even capture that beauty fully. But they do hold space for it. They do give us something about magic. Perfect example, I was just talking to my friend who's a staunch Christian, and we were talking about Christianity, and he was talking about the message of the cross. See, people don't understand the message of the cross. He was talking about how the right wing and the Charlie Kirk people call themselves Christians, but they're not connected to the message of the cross. And it just occurred to me that as beautiful as the message of the cross is or might be, why are we compelled, why is he compelled to go 2,000 years in the past to see the message? Why does it seem, and I used to say this as an atheist, why does it seem, when I was an atheist so many years ago, that magic, this sort of magical thing occurred in a time we call biblical time, and somehow since then there's no more magic happening? You know, where's the parting of the Red Sea? Where's the loaves of bread being multiplied? Where's the water to the wine? Where's even, you know, even the bad magic? Where's the locusts? Where's the, you know, all that weird shit? It's all here. It's all here. We just don't call it that. All of us, we're living through a continued COVID-19 viral crisis. We're living through incredible power struggles and lies and manipulation. We're living through it. And as I said, your life is magical. The fact that you woke up this morning is magical. The fact that I'm saying words, I'm saying sounds, I can mouth and articulate a set of sounds and symbols that will make sense to you. That's magical. Take a moment to appreciate that. There is no objective reason for any of us to be here and for any of this stuff to exist. We've been gifted this incredible opportunity for experience. And I really feel that it's important to recognize that truth and to incorporate that story into our lives, into our approach, into our lens as we look out into the world. Start from an incredible appreciation and gratitude for these magical and inexplicable conditions that have given rise to our lives. And note that the stories matter. Note that the stories matter. Whether it's a sort of an atheistic story that wants to try to, it doesn't want to understand this magical part. It is, and it refuses, or it doesn't want to engage in some of these spiritual concepts. And so we end up with a story about ourselves as being sort of evolved apes, that the story of life is merely a story of evolution, as randomly created life conscious beings that have evolved over time. And you know, we have these theories about natural selection and competition, and we have Darwinian approaches and lens. But this tells you, so people adopt that and they get to say, oh well, we're just evolved apes, and they fail to understand just what they are. You're not just an evolved ape in that sense. You're not just, you know, you're not, if you take that story and you hold on to that story alone, you'll fail to appreciate a much deeper truth about things. And then that's the atheist people. Then like I said, you know, every religion has different things, but this Christian conversation I had, which is so heavily devoted to periods, you know, 2,000 years ago, events that occurred 2,000 years ago, doesn't seem to want to embrace our moment and the magic that is within us and the magic that we all share in this moment, space and time. It seems to be waiting for, this may not be everybody's condition, this may not be everybody's interpretation, but it is certainly a lot of people's, and this conversation in particular seems to be excited about something that happened in the past, longing for a return of Jesus or some magic to come back. And this moment is merely a waiting. This moment is just a kind of a waiting room for something. Man, that's not it either. That's not it either. But if you have a story, either one of those stories or another one, there's so many different stories. There's so many ways to think about oneself. You have the freedom to have thoughts and to come to conclusions. But I'm just I find myself really fascinated in what is, man. I find myself really curious and excited by the big questions about what is. And when I ask the big questions and I take seriously the big questions and I go out and I inquire and I put myself in a position to experience, I come to the conclusion that we are surrounded by things that I can only call magical or spiritual. There are things that are, there's an order to the chaos. There's a chaos to the order. And there's paradox. And it's all miraculous. It's all miraculous. It's all miraculous. And it's only through like being comfortable with the idea of expanding myself beyond something called logic, of being comfortable and feeling safe enough in my own experience to articulate something that, even though most people won't, it doesn't sit comfortably in the realm of logic, that I can still accept it. And I can still try to articulate it. I can still try to share it. And so the conclusion, there's no conclusion here, but where I'm at is, where I'm trying to point to is that whatever word we want to call it, if you call it God or Allah or spirit or universe or something further, this is unique and powerful moment that we're all in. And the beauty is now. The beauty is not 2,000 years ago. The beauty is not in the future. Or maybe it is also in the future. Maybe it was also 2,000 years ago. The beauty existed then. The beauty exists now. What a failure. What a mistake to come to the conclusion that there's no beauty here today. That there's no magic here today. There's nothing but corrupt politicians and bullshit ass people. That's all there is. Well, it isn't all there is. There's a powerful energy, for lack of words. There's an energy that exists within all of us. Our life and our experience is an interface with the external world, and there's a connection that we all have. There's an intuition we all have. There are preferences and things that we're all driven by. I just had a cool meeting, a business meeting with a friend and colleague, and I learned for the first time today. We'd been talking about different things for months, and I learned for the first time that he grew up wanting to be a pilot. And so, you know, while I play Overwatch, he plays like flight simulators. These crazy flight simulators that are real, immersive, real time, like weather. They take weather patterns from real life and put them in the game. When he's flying in the plane, he can look out the window and they've got like, you know, he can leave from BWI airport and see the airport and see like other structures of Baltimore. In other parts of the world, he said the other day he flew to Tibet, I think. I forgot what he said. I didn't know that about him. What? I never grew up with a pilot desire. That's what from where does that come? How did I end up with into football? How did I end up with my preferences and the things that caught my attention and pulled me in different ways? Even my vices. How did I end up with my particular who I am? It's a phenomenon beyond recognition or beyond language. And unfortunately, because it's so often beyond language, well, that means that we don't speak about it. We struggle to share and to see our common experiences in this. Like even in that diversity, again, his passion has to do with being a pilot and flying. It's not mine. So I could say that that's a difference. But no, deeper than that supposed difference is he's passionate about something. I'm passionate about something. Okay, well, what is that? From where did that arise? And how have we chosen to engage with that? And who are we? How do we see ourselves in comparison to the world? How do we measure ourselves in comparison to the world? I'm intrigued by some of the language. They might call it New Age spiritual. This person I was talking to, this Christian person, he's very suspicious of New Age spiritual. He would do it with the quotes. He's not a fan of it. But words like vibration, talking about vibration, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's possible that the early prophets did not have that language. They certainly experienced, we're all experiencing the same thing, but there's no language. There's no language at certain points. And so it doesn't become part of the vernacular. It's unseen. It's invisible. I posted a couple weeks ago this article from, I think, was it Popular Mechanics or one of these science magazines. And they were talking about scientific breakthroughs in understanding life and death, and they were saying that there's a third state. There's what we call the first and second state, which are life and death, states of life and then state of death. And they say that there are organisms, and there's a space called the third state, which is a mix of life and death. These organisms appear to be alive, but they also have features that we would consider to be like a more of a death state. And it struck me that it's the language. Even that word third state, the only reason they call it third state is it's predicated on the prior idea of the two states. It's predicated on a false, incomplete story about life. It's predicated on two states, and so you add the third. But the truth is more complex even than three states. The language is the narrative that we hold. And so if there is such a thing as a third state, which these science journals believe to be true, it's not new. This is an experience that our parents lived in a world that had third states. Our grandparents had lived in a world that had third states. Jesus lived in a world that had third states. Pick your historical figure. They lived in a world that had third states, but they never talked about it. They never observed it. They never experienced it and gave it the language. It was never part of the understanding in the same way. That's the same thing I see with like vibration, which wants to point to a kind of energetic fingerprint, a unique energetic fingerprint that you and each of us carry. And it wants to point to a high vibration, which means that I'm in alignment with myself. I'm in tune with myself. I'm aware of my full self. I'm aware of the things that are good about me. I'm aware of the bad things that are bad about me. I've actually incorporated all of it. I've actually gotten rid of those words, good and bad, those judgmental words. I've accepted myself in its full. That's like the best, that's highest vibration. We're all in different states of this. We're all in different states of this. You see, when you see people, who are struggling with their identity one way or another, who are lashing out at people quite often you're dealing with a low vibration person who is not whose vibrations haven't reached their haven't in tune with themselves. See, this is language again, right? High vibration implies awareness and acceptance of what is. And again, think, I can look at the texts and see Jesus talking about vibration actually, but not using that word. Why? Because it wasn't available to him. And it wasn't available to the people who edited the Bible so many years after. And so imagine being in 2025 and being so attached to only an old set of language, suspicious of new language that could be pointing to the same thing, could be pointing to the same thing in a deeper and more profound way, and giving us more, with the language comes a logic that gives us an ability to understand and to engage better. Language is so key, fam. I keep talking about it because it's so key. Language is so key. And the ability to tell more complex stories. Stories that engage with the whole thing. And point to the magic. I think if you engage with the whole thing, you end up pointing to the magic. Because as I talk about vibration, there's something about this vibration thing. It's not just about like, I accept myself, or I say that I accept myself, or I feel that I accept. I certainly felt like I accepted myself years ago, 15 years ago. You asked me, hey, do you accept yourself? Do you like yourself? I would have said, yeah, I like myself. But I can tell you now at 42, I can tell you 15 years later, I can tell you that what I'm pointing to is something more than just me telling you that I accept myself. It is about actually going, doing the work, looking at my shadows, looking at my anxieties, the pain points, things that I either hide or there's a version of me that I prefer to be known out in the world. What is it that I keep more to the chest and is more private to myself, and to accept it truly, and to understand that those things are my reasons for hiding them, have nothing to do with my own badness or incompleteness, or that I have to change necessarily, but that I am who I am. I love who I am because I've seen it and I've come to a peace with it. And somehow through that, there's a discourse we can have on vibration that has to do with that. And that somehow through that, we're talking about an engagement with source. We're talking about an engagement with God. Another word, source. If I say source, this Christian friend will get awkward, does not like the word source, wants to say God. And it just blows my mind. It's like, God is also a symbol. God is just a symbol that we've generally agreed to. But if you saw the Charlie Kirk thing as he did, you see that people are saying the word God, and they might say that word. Now you're happy that they said that word, but they have a different thing in their head. They have a different story about what that means. So don't get caught on the symbols. But don't get caught trying to commit to symbols that everybody agreed to. That brings us back to a logic again. This so-called logic. It's not necessarily what is. It doesn't necessarily map perfectly onto what is. We might arrive at better language together by engaging with this magical experience that exists right now. Not 2,000 years ago alone. Now, to notice it. Wow, everything works out this way. Unbelievable. And that I'm not foreign to it. I'm not like some outsider that happened here randomly. I'm not separate from it. God didn't expel me from anything. That's a story too. I am one with the thing. I am like, I was born here. I exist here in this time and space with all of you, and that we belong here, and that there's a purpose and a value, and the experience is ours, and we get to make it what we want. We can engage with the external world by also engaging with ourselves and paying attention and noticing ourselves and being ourselves and loving and accepting. And somehow the external world responds to that, and people and events seem to occur that become like steps towards something, towards my own individual, my own hopes, and my own best expression will be helped along by the external world through my acceptance of myself. So one of the things here, for even on this episode, me being able to say all this stuff comes after years of fighting these feelings that it's too weird and it's too, be logical. Talk about politics. Talk about football. Talk about relationships. Even if I'm going to get controversial, like you'll get controversial in these arenas that are pretty much like, what I'm saying, these paths that are well traveled and that we can agree on this language. And it's been a real struggle for me that I'm grateful I'm walking through it. I'm walking through it right now as I do this episode, to engage with language and perspective that is much less familiar, much less in the realm of logic, and yet still true, yet very true. And I believe that those of us who are, I know this, those of us who are willing, hey, what's good? To engage with the language will get the benefit. So that's the episode. Listen, that's how I see it. I'll see you tomorrow.